Give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you. You're where my help comes from. Give me wisdom. You know just what to do. I love you more than I should. I will love you more than I should. And I will love you more than I ought. For with you all my days, I will only look to you, God. We trust you in any season. You're there with us. We trust you, God. Come on, let's sing this together. Sing hallelujah.
Well, good afternoon to all of you, our wonderful people, on today, this Wednesday afternoon. And we call you wonderful because we just think y'all are just awesome because you watch us, you support us, you share this information, you comment in the comment section. And so we are so glad that God has connected us over these airwaves. And so thank you so much for joining us here on today. Welcome to all of you who are on Facebook. Hello to our YouTube family, our Twitter family, our Instagram family. If you're watching us through the My Sunday app, welcome on today. And just welcome to our Winning Wednesday, where we are all winners. And so even if on today you don't necessarily feel like you're a winner, hopefully after today's segment, you will. So we have some great information on today. Make sure you tag 5 people. Pastor upped it yesterday. So you need to tag 5 people in the broadcast. So if you're on Facebook, do the @ then put the person's name. Do that to 5 different people. Make sure you text 5 people on today because we're going to have a great discussion. And I was thinking back, all this month, we've had some really great speakers, really great topics. We talked about life insurance. Listen, go get it. That was the theme of it. Go get it. It creates generational wealth. And also, your funeral expenses are not your family's responsibility. They are yours. And so get life insurance. Nicole Ivory did an awesome job with that. We had a dentist come on, and she talked about oral hygiene. Listen, go get your teeth cleaned twice a year. Make sure you get those x-rays because prevention is the key. And then home ownership. Last week, Brandy was awesome. She talked about what that process looks like, the do's and don'ts of it, the market on today. And so we've had some really great speakers. And so today is no different. We're going to talk about another topic that some of us, if not all of us, can relate to, and that is anxiety. And I was actually looking at an article the other day that said that anxiety is the most common mental illness. I did not realize that, and that it affects over 40 million adults. And so, even though it is highly treatable, only a small percentage really try to get the help that they need. And so, we're talking about this on today because there's so many things that are going on in this world that can cause us to be just a little anxious. Of course, we have, COVID. There's a new variant that's out now. There's death is all around us. There's so many people who have passed. And so it can cause you to kind of be anxious. Some people have just received diagnosis of illnesses, and then if you say, well, that's not me, maybe there's some other things that are in your face that may be causing you to be anxious. You're in school, maybe getting ready to graduate, getting ready to go to the next level. Maybe things on your job are causing you to be anxious, maybe family members, whatever it is. We all have something in our lives that may get us off track. And so on today, we have a very good friend of ours, Miss Valerie Wilson. She's going to talk to us about anxiety, maybe give us some pointers, some tips on how to address it. And then also, if you need something further, she can help you get that help that you need. And so we have Miss Valerie Wilson on today. She is a licensed professional counselor at Refined Mental Health and Wellness there in Arizona. And listen, if you're here in Birmingham or Georgia or Texas or wherever, and you think, well, I can't fly to Arizona, don't worry. She's going to tell you how she can meet with you via Zoom. So there's all kind of ways you'll be able to meet with her, and she's going to help us on today. So I introduce to you all Valerie Wilson. Hey, Valerie.
Good morning. Good morning, Lady Pam. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for bringing up all of those different points in terms of what we have to deal with on a daily basis. One of them being COVID, another one, the inflations that we're experiencing with gas prices and groceries. And even with the war that's happening across the country that we think may not affect us, it truly does. It is devastating to see the lives that are lost in that experience. And even, like you mentioned, death even present with us in our everyday lives, and we're losing people who we thought we would have a lifetime or longer years with. And so, yes, all of those things do create some anxiety. And then on top of that, you have to think about what getting life insurance is going to look like in future. If you suffered a job loss during this season of COVID, then that might look bleak to you in terms of having the capability to do that, or even buying a home. Mortgage prices escalated as well, and so the reality of that were look very different than it did a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
So I would love to dive into anxiety. This is one of my areas of specialty. This is an area also that I will be vulnerable and admit that I have struggled with since my youth, and have implemented some skills and strategies to work through my own anxieties. Doing this today with you, Lady Pam, is a miracle to me because it used to be pretty uncomfortable for me to even sit in front of a camera, to even talk in front of a camera. Over the years, that's gotten a little bit easier. Well, I would say a lot easier. All credit to God for that, and all the different tools and strategies that He helped me to tap into. So I want to be able to share those same tools and strategies with you all, and hopefully you'll find that to be helpful.
Awesome.
So the first thing I want to mention is this scripture that is often quoted. It's found in Luke chapter 12, verse 25 through 26. It says, "Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life?" Since actually, I need to share my screen with you all so that you can at least see it and follow along. Can you see my screen okay, Lady Pam?
Yes, it's perfect.
Perfect. So the scripture says, "Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest?" I want to kind of make some interpretation, or try and unpack this a little bit. In this very moment, there are different things that I have to attend to after I meet here today. There are some things of emergency that I have to attend to. And while those things of old times in years past, I would probably be very distracted in this moment, and I would not be able to focus in this very moment, given that those other things are present. And I used to deal with intrusive thoughts. So intrusive thoughts will have all of those different things that I need to tend to going through my mind in a space where I really need to focus on being present in this moment. And so, since those things have their own challenges and their own troubles, I need to be able to focus in this space, because there's nothing that I can do about those things at this time. But when we attempt to do that, to give attention in things that we cannot affect change, it only takes away our energy. It distracts us from doing the things that we need to do in the right now. And so it just wears you out to the point that you might not even have the energy to do what you need to do regarding those things later. So I think this is the perfect scripture that I would like to have you to think about as I go through the material. Remind yourself at times where you feel overwhelmed by the different things in your life to be present in this moment. As I put this PowerPoint together and had other things going on around me, I needed to sit in that space. I wanted to be able to put something in front of you that would be beneficial and useful, but had those other things come into play and start distracting me, I would not have been able to put this PowerPoint together. And so essentially that leaves things undone. So let's talk about some of the common symptoms that you can experience with anxiety. You may wonder, do I deal with anxiety? What does that even feel like? And so some of the things that you want to kind of assess with yourself is if there are different moments where you feel like your heart rate is increasing. Let's say, for instance, before a presentation, like today, a public speaking event, kids going off to college, or any major event that's occurring in your life. Do you experience these symptoms? Sometimes you can get sweaty hands or feet. You become fidgety or shaking, trembling. You have difficulty breathing or have shallow breathing. And in some severe cases, you can even have shortness of breath. And then also with anxiety attacks or panic attacks, those things can sometimes mimic what feels like a heart attack. And so doctors have had their patients show up at the office or at the emergency room thinking they are having a heart attack when in actuality, they're having an anxiety attack. Um, Again, the intrusive thoughts that I was talking about, you may wonder, like, or maybe you haven't heard this term, but the way that you can begin to think about this term intrusive thoughts is paying attention to those what if messages. For example, what if I fail at this speaking engagement? What if they don't like me? What if I make a mistake? What if they judge me? If your internal messages are starting with what if, or are trying to figure out what the outcome is going to be, when that it takes you away from the present moment, you're probably dealing with some anxiety. So I put one of the coping strategies here at the very beginning when I'm going to talk about it a little bit later as well. One of the things I tell some of my patients is to be mindful of your body. So increasing body awareness would be ideal in this situation. And so here we go to anatomy class. Our body naturally presents or produces cortisol, and it naturally produces adrenaline. And both of those things are called stress hormones. And when stress hormones are released into our body, it's designed for us to either fight or flight. So there has to be a presenting threat or something that is presenting itself that you need to get away from. Once you've gotten away from that particular thing, the body then regulates itself. However, with overwhelming stress or being in a space where you're worried and anxious about all the different things that occur in your life, that produces overwhelming cortisol and adrenaline in your system. And to be exposed to these stress hormones over a long period of time, you can begin to see some of these other things take effect, like heart disease, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, digestive issues, nerve problems, anxiety, depression, headaches. So pay attention to, different things that's going on as well in your body. How do you feel when you feel anxious? Do you tense your body in certain parts? I remember a time where I was driving and I would be clenching the wheel, not even realizing how nervous and anxious I was in traffic. I remember also clenching my thighs and my glutes at the same time. And I had to talk myself through that process. Relax, take a deep breath, and let go of the wheel. Relax your thighs, uncurl your toes, all of those different things. So being aware of how anxiety registers in your body will help you to be also more aware of what you need to coach yourself to do. Some people I see, did you have a question, Lady Pam?
I did, but I'm gonna let you finish that.
Okay, all right. Sometimes people have tension in their neck, carry tension in their neck and shoulders, their glutes, in the forehead. Sometimes you see people have what they think is a natural frown. Our faces should be very relaxed and not necessarily have these frowns. Sometimes around the temples, you can have tension there. Clenched teeth or grinding teeth at night is an indication that you might be struggling with some anxiety, or clenched fist. Okay. Again, shallow breathing, stomach issues, joint pain, weakened immune system, skin issues, rashes, acne, welts. My sister, when she would, this used to happen for her, but I don't know if it still does, but when she would be under significant stress, she would break out in these welts. And we began to learn that was a stress response. Again, sweaty heart, increased blood pressure, and frequent headaches, or migraines. I'm going to pause, Lady Pam, for you to ask your question.
Yeah, I was thinking, what about for those who are nail biters, or I know your list doesn't probably comprise of everything,
Mhm.
but even we have a family member who twirls their hair a lot. And
Yes.
I think is subconscious because, and even my cuticles are horrible because I sit there and I bite the skin
Mhm,
around the
mhm.
cuticles. But what about things like that? Can that be anxiety
Absolutely,
related?
absolutely, absolutely. And I used to be that hair twirler where if before a test or during a test, that's what something I would do. I have a son who is a nail biter. And yes, all those different things that you mentioned can also be underlying issues with anxiety.
Okay.
So thank you for mentioning. And yes, in fact, this list is not exhaustive, but those things, just take these things and think about, do some self-reflecting and see if anything else come up for you guys. And if you can think of anything, go ahead and mention those things in the chat below, or just let's just make it interactive so that other people can get their memories jogged as well. Do I do that? All right. Thank you so much for bringing those things up, Lady Pam. So here are some red flags when I think about what could lead to anxiety for myself or intrusive thoughts. I used to have this fear of time passing, or chronophobia is a type of anxiety where in the morning, where nothing has happened, I haven't even gotten started with my day, and I'm anxious about not having enough time in that day to complete my task. Okay. That's an indication that I'm overwhelmed. And that's also an indication that I'm probably disorganized. Overcommitting time can lead to this chronophobia. Attempting to give beyond your limits over an extended period of time. There is a such thing as sacrifice. And sometimes we step beyond our boundaries to do a thing for a person out of the kindness of our heart. But when you're doing that on a regular basis, that is a red flag, because you're probably going to begin to start experiencing some anxiety for for feeling compelled to step into that space as often as you do. Difficulty saying no to others. Um, Red flag is passive or passive aggressive communication styles, meaning something bothers you. Maybe someone has asked you for a favor, and you're unable to complete that favor, or be there in their time of need. You're setting aside something that you know that you really need to get done of high priority on your own list of tasks, and you begin to set those things aside to be available to someone else, but yet you're angry or disgruntled about it, or doing that thing grudgingly. That's a red flag. There's this misconception about being selfless, I think, in Christianity, that there's a message that I used to get having grown up in church: it's better to give than to receive. But if your selflessness does not allow you to attend to your needs, this is not selflessness, this is insecurity. And the underlying message is, I am not Christian enough, good enough, or a nobody if I'm not available to meet others' needs. You might have some other underlying messages, but those are some ones that I can think of when I was going through some of this. True selflessness says, because the Spirit of God lives in me, I am capable of embodying the fruits of the Spirit, which enables me to care for others. In my humanness, I recognize where I'm limited and grateful for God's limitless power to work directly in the lives of his children and indirectly through my brothers and sisters in the body of Christ to satisfy the unmet needs of those in need of assistance. Also, a red flag could be concerned about inconveniencing others, believing that their needs are of more importance than your own, and being concerned with, how will I be perceived if I'm not available to this person? You guys can probably think about some other red flags. Again, let's keep the conversation going by introducing those thoughts into the chat. Here are some behaviors you want to try and think about. And again, you might have an expanded list, but some of the behaviors is isolating yourself or avoidance, meaning you have so much going on. There is so much in life happening right now. I just don't even want to participate or engage. And you just step away, you go off the grid in a very unhealthy way without completing your task. Procrastinating or putting off task. Again, passive or aggressive communication style, especially in those times when someone is asking you another favor. Behaviors like irritability, being short or curt with others. Also, some behaviors with anxiety is being talkative or feeling compelled to fill a silent space.
That
Can
sounds like
you,
women, Valerie.
huh?
Sound like most women. I'm
Figured you
just
was.
saying.
I read that slowly because I thought, oh, she probably could, yes, this is probably most women.
Okay.
And here's the thing. What I do practice is practice pausing. And in a space where I feel like I need to step in to make myself known or relevant, I also give myself permission to just sit back and observe and, engage when I feel like it. Avoiding conflict is also a behavior that can trigger anxiety. Controlling is another behavior, thinking of 101 ways that you can fix this problem that you know good and fine well you don't have control over. And the question is, where does that leave God? If you're controlling that situation and you know it's one of the uncontrollables, where does that leave God? What is his position? What do you think his posture is when you're in that space of being controlling? I imagine that he's sitting, he's like, okay, daughter, okay, son, when you're done, I'll allow you to reach your end and then I'll step in. At least that's the download I got from the Holy Spirit. Mood swings can be also some of the behaviors. If you notice that you're having shifts in your quick shifts in your mood, that can be an indication that you're struggling with some anxiety. Okay, so getting into coping strategies, and before I get into coping strategies, I want to check in with you, Lady Pam, to see if you had any questions before I move on.
No, that was good. I love the behaviors. Yeah, I'm good on questions. I'm looking at
All
these
right.
strategies. Yeah.
So it's some coping strategies. I'm introducing a lot of things that I have tried. And again, you may have some different things that you have tried and could be helpful to others. But I had to go through a process of practicing breathing. So you want to create an atmosphere or engage in activities that are conducive for regulating your breathing naturally. One of the things that I like to do, and Lady Pam, I remember when your youngest son was you guys would bring him to the nursery when we were over at TWC. I was in the children's ministry. And whenever I'm participating in church, that's my go-to. That's my go-to because holding those babies remind you how to breathe. There was this scripture, and I can't remember the exact verse or the book, but Jesus said, unless you become like these little children, you will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. And I asked the question, well, what does that even mean? What does it mean to become like a little child? A child trusts that you as their parent they're going to be taken care of. They are very forgiving. They breathe easily. You watch them sleep. Their tummy rises and falls with ease. But a lot of times what happens with adults is we experience hardship in life. We begin to take shallow breaths, breathing from the chest and no longer breathing from the belly is proper. If you ever had an experience with a voice coach or came across some content from a voice coach, they teach singing from the belly. and then to also project. So if you need help with that, holding a baby could be that thing that could help you with that. Taking a soak in the tub, there's something about a soak in the tub that just helps you to release that full breath. Visit nature scenes if that's a thing that you like to do. Exercise, because once your body is in motion, you have to go through the breathing process to endure the workout. And if you find yourself overly exhausted after a workout, you probably need to be working with a personal trainer who can help you to go through those breathing skills to help you to endure a workout a little bit better so that you're not feeling overly exhausted. Go and get a massage. Now, I could be a little bit biased in this because I'm also a massage therapist too, but it certainly is helpful to me. I go at least once or twice a month. It's very helpful to my joints, which I'm having some issues with, but is certainly helpful in taking a moment for yourself and working through breathing. Or you can just go directly to practicing breathing exercises. YouTube has a lot of there's some different things out there, and I don't agree with all of it, but I like the more simplified versions of the breathing exercises that are available on YouTube that can get you into a space. But here's the thing: when you're going to practice breathing exercises, that can feel a little bit uncomfortable at first because you're going from an extreme of being busy in your life, and then you're going to another extreme of sitting in a space that's you're still. So you may have to start out with 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and increase it over time. But it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. You might even get in the headspace of feeling guilty for not being productive, but in actuality, you are. You're being productive in caring for yourself. You can even feel a little bit restless in that space, but I would challenge you to lend yourself to that space over and over again until it feels a little bit more natural and a little bit more comfortable. More self-care. So more coping strategies, self-care. This picture you see here is a very nice spot that I found over in Santa Cruz, California. And I just got back from this trip. This was a solo trip that I take once a year. And it is for the purpose of dumping those things that's on my plate that I cannot control. For me, the visual is casting those things out to sea and allowing God to deal with those things that are outside of my control. It's also representative of a space where I can grieve because I had not been able to, find a still place, after all the different things that I experienced in this past year, business changes, death in the family, school, all of those different pressures. I had to sit still. So I took a 4-day trip to Santa Cruz to be alone. And there are times throughout the year I'll go on vacation with my family and with my husband, but this one was designed just for me. I wanted to be very intentional about how I utilize this space. And this was the sweetest spot. This was a bench on the cliff, and I just sat there most of the day, just crying out to God. So it is important when you're doing self-care that you unplug and rest without guilt. Treat you. You are deserving of the same energy that you give to other people. And if you're not giving that to yourself, that is what we call self-abandonment. And when there is a self-abandonment, sometimes we're in a space of doing things for others with the expectation that they're going to do the same thing for us, or they're going to reciprocate. And that's not always the case. But then that leads us to disappointment and depression and continuing to look out rather than within to have our needs met. Are you meeting your needs? That's a question to ask yourself in this moment. Am I meeting my needs? Because that's your responsibility, no one else's. Self-care, delegate responsibilities, ask for help. And for us believers who got the message that it's better to give than to receive, actually receive the help. When someone offers help or you ask someone to help you and they can commit to that, receive the help. I know sometimes we can ask for help and then we pull back and it's like, no, never mind, I got it. Actually allow yourself to receive it. I believe in that exchange in relationship, giving to receive. And think about what it looks like to always be the giver in a relationship and not the receiver, whether it's words of encouragement or different things that you're doing for people. At some point, the other person that you're in relationship with can begin to feel like you're setting yourself in a higher position than them, because they always are coming to you rather than having a somewhat of an exchange. Talk it out. Self-care means I can admit or acknowledge the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions that occurred to me. Be vulnerable. Putting on a front or a face or being fake contradicts the internal chaos that is being stored on the inside. However, I will say that growing up, being able to keep these things on the inside, these negative thoughts and feelings, and not admitting that they do exist, was perceived as being strong. That was symbolic of strength, but that's not strength, because the internal chaos is happening. The disquieted spirit is present. You don't feel at peace and of sound mind. So I would say be honest with yourself and be vulnerable and talk things out with others. There's no better way. I love to call my sister in Alabama. She, Lakeisha Mann, Evangelist Lakeisha Mann. She's a dear friend of mine. And whenever I need to talk things out, I call her. When she needs to talk things out, she calls me. Because one of the things with anxiety that you have to be mindful of is that those intrusive thoughts do come, but they just recycle over each other. They just recycle. It's the same information repeated in different ways. But when I talk it out with someone, I can get new perspective or new ideas and be able to work towards a solution. Be willing to let go of what you cannot control. This may require you to grieve and move towards accepting the thing you cannot control. My example from my own personal life is choices that my adult children make. I can't control that. And I can give them suggestions. I can make recommendations. I can give them different strategies. I can give them different tools. But when I open my hand to give, it is up to them to take it or leave it. I cannot demand that they take it or leave it. So get in the practice of casting your cares on the Lord, because he truly cares for us, according to 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. Another self-care strategy is something I've implemented as well, is setting boundaries, whether this is with people or settings that trigger anxiety. Determine the limits of your patience and your tolerance, and be willing to not extend yourself beyond that point. And check your motives. So motives, I would say motives with an agenda is this: having an expectation or demanding that others reciprocate, seeking approval, recognition, or to achieve status or acceptance. When these things are not satisfied, the person anxiously search out other ways to have these needs met, or they become resentful. So when you give to give. It's the same is true with tithes. When you give of your time, give to give without the expectation of getting anything back. And when you feel that you have given out and you don't have anything left to give, steal away to a space, get filled back up, and then give from that place. All right. Moving on. Another coping strategies that I like to utilize is journaling, but journaling with a purpose versus freestyling. Now, journaling, freestyling that's good and acceptable. There's no wrong way to do it. I like to journal with a purpose, and that often involves some self-check-in questions. And I'll show you those self-check-in questions I like to ask myself there on the next slide. But journaling with a purpose, a lot of times we're dealing with situations that causes us anxiety. So the way that I like to work through it is, what is the situation? What boundaries do I feel were violated, or what seems to be out of my control? Acknowledge the negative thoughts and feelings without judgment or making excuses for others' behaviors, such as, I shouldn't feel this way. The moment you start resisting that those negative feelings are there because you want to be strong, quote unquote strong, the moment you start resisting that those negative thoughts and feelings are there is the moment that you can begin struggling with anxiety. That can trigger anxiety. So instead of resistance, embrace those negative thoughts, process them, get information from them. Whenever I have negative thoughts and feelings and emotions, they're there to give me information. Okay, producing this PowerPoint or gathering information for this PowerPoint. I was feeling a little bit anxious. What am I feeling anxious about? Well, I have a lot of information in my mind. It kind of feels disorganized. How do I want to lay it out? So I sat with myself and it's like, okay, I like to present it in this particular order. I went through a whole process, but that actually came from anxiety. It gave me information about the things that I needed, what I wanted to present. So I allowed it to take me into a space where I can gather more information and create a plan to put this PowerPoint together. Now, where it would have been unhealthy, where the anxiety would have become unhealthy is procrastinating. That's something I used to do. When I become anxious about a project, I would then put it off. It's like, I don't want to deal with it right now. I can't do this. What if it didn't come out right? And then the anxiety began to dictate my behavior, my actions, and my thoughts or my feelings. And it dictates my mood. So anxiety, let's go ahead and normalize that because that does happen for most people, and it's okay. The thing is that you want to make sure that you're filtering it for information and not allowing it to dictate. Look at the underlying messages that come with those thoughts and feelings and challenge them. Are they true? Challenge the negative thoughts by putting them on trial. See yourself in a courtroom situation, visualize yourself in a courtroom situation, and you're talking to these negative thoughts. You say this about me as a person, but where is your evidence? And as the prosecutor, you should be gathering evidence to discredit the underlying messages. And a good hint is go to scripture. What does God say about you? Or what has God done for you? Remembering his promises and remembering what he has done. Also, when you have these negative thoughts and feelings, filter it for what is in your control and what is not. And be willing to let go of those things that are not in your control. Also, one of the things that I like to ask myself whenever a situation has presented itself, where I feel like, especially when my boundaries have been violated, I process what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, but I also ask myself, could this be anything other than what I perceive it to be? I mean, I want to put myself in a space where I just don't have tunnel vision, thinking about how only I perceive it. I want to think about it from different angles. And then as you do journal, you can turn that journal entry into a prayer. The reason I like to turn it into a prayer because I allow God some room to speak. I want to allow God some room to speak and give me answers or solutions to the things that I have presented in my journal. And here are some self-check-in questions that I like to process through. How am I feeling? What is not working for me? What is working for me? What do I need? What am I proud of? And what can I let go of? And just like I mentioned earlier, we want to normalize that anxiety does occur. God gave you these emotions. However, he didn't give you these emotions to dominate you. He gave them to you. Healthy anxiety puts you in a space where you can, it leads to gathering information. It can help you to identify information that will affect your daily living activities. Reevaluate, like for instance, if we are anxious about the inflation, maybe instead of becoming overwhelmed and dominated by that feeling of anxiety, go to your finances. Do you need to reevaluate that? Do you need to stop going to Starbucks so that you can go and afford some groceries or any other things that you like to enjoy? Maybe you have felt anxious about the racial injustices in America and across the country. And instead of allowing the feeling of anxiety and frustration dominate you and dictate your mood and your behavior, go to assess your community involvement. In what ways do you want to get involved in the community? So while the feeling is still the same, it's taking you into different directions. Either you can go to a space where you're feeling overwhelmed by those feelings, or you can go to a space where it could be productive and useful in your life. When anxiety presents itself, it can help you to determine what precautions to take or how to make other preparations. Unhealthy anxiety leads to worry, making assumptions, and ruminating on the anticipated outcome while neglecting to gather information. Unhealthy anxiety can also cause you to make impulsive decisions. Your mood is dictated by the anxiety as opposed to the steps followed in the healthy column. It consumes your time. It consumes our time to sit in a space and continue to have so much dialogue around racial injustice and not take action. It is not enough to continue to have dialogue around the inflations if we're not willing to look at our finances and make some adjustments there. So what I'm saying to you is that your anxiety may be trying to give you some information that you actually need and to act on, or maybe not act on. So that's why I wanted to kind of normalize it, break it down into a healthy and unhealthy column. I know I've done presented content on anxiety before and had not presented it in such a way, but I think that would be very helpful for you to look at when you do experience anxiety. So the very last slide, or the slide prior to the last, I put some self-help material that I've used over the years, some books, one of them, The Bondage Breaker, The Anxiety Cure, Telling Yourself the Truth, and A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. All of these different books have played a part in my life in helping me to regulate anxiety. So to become skillful at managing anxiety will require you to be intentional with utilizing resources and strategies that can aid your process. You will have moments when you do not feel like going to the mental gym, is what I call it. The mental gym requires you to get up and do the work. But remember that peace personified and sound mind personified relies on you to put anxiety in its place. Otherwise, peace and sound mind, become the sacrifice. You have to give up peace and sound mind if you're unwilling to do the work to manage your anxiety. So that's all that I have. Lady Pam, I'll give it back to you.
Awesome, Valerie. Awesome, awesome, awesome. You talked about the symptoms, the behaviors. I want to go back to what you said about healthy and unhealthy anxiety, because you're right. There's a healthy anxiety that help pushes you to perform and do well. What about those people who are, let's say, stuck in a particular unhealthy anxiety behavior. So, for the person who is, let's say, stuck in worrying, with some of those coping strategies you talked about, help get them from an unhealthy state to a healthy state.
It could, but when you're stuck, a lot of times you have tunnel vision, and the only thing that you can really focus on are the things that's not going well for you or the things that's creating that anxiety. So that's where a therapist or a counselor or a close friend who has a pretty skillful way of navigating these same things could be helpful. So I would say at that point, get some help. But that is not a promise that those things are going to work. I do work with some of my patients, and sometimes they're still stuck in session. And a lot of times it's those intrusive thoughts that they just can't catch a break from that keeps them stuck.
Yeah.
In those cases, I do send them for a psychological evaluation to determine if medication needs to be a part of the treatment plan.
Okay. And that's kind of one thing I was thinking about, of course, we're promoting you, and of course the coping strategies are wonderful. But for someone who is having more difficulty, then yes, we want them to come see you or see a therapist, or like you said, talk to someone who is skilled in navigating not just your side, but also, giving you a more, I guess, peripheral idea of what could be going on, not just seeing your side, but just kind of seeing the sides of all things. So that was an example. But okay, no, this was awesome, Valerie. I don't think I have any questions. You did such a great job. I don't see any questions in the comment section. But everyone, if you're watching on Facebook, of course, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Valerie has her information up here. I'm gonna go ahead and say it because sometimes on Instagram you may not can see all of the words or all the letters, but she's Valerie Wilson. She's on Facebook, and that's Valerie with VALE. RIE Wilson. The phone number for her administrative assistant is area code 480-455-7742. So again, 480-455-7742. She also has an email address, of course, refined mind, with an S, health@gmail.com. So refined minds health@gmail.com. Great information on today. Great. And it's funny, we were younger, we journaled as little girls, we had a little diary, as adults, we need to get back to that. But great points. Awesome. I loved all of it. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching, everyone. Of course, listen, we have a few announcements, but the main thing we want you to know, of course, if you're going to attend our in-person drive-up service, that's going to be April the 17th on Resurrection Sunday, please make sure you send us an email at welcomeback@bhambc.org. Of course, we have a website, bhambc.org. You can scroll and look at all the announcements, the ways to give. Our small group is having a break for right now. We're going to resume that back on the first part of April. In order to reserve your spot, make sure that you send us an email at smallgroups@bhambc.org. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page, so we have a ton of announcements there about the singles group that we're starting, the married couples group that we're starting, the Timothy class groups that we're starting. That's for people who want to learn how to teach and study the Bible. So please make sure you go look at all of that. You have to register by March 31st. And so that you can get included, so that we can send you the updates. We can tell you what's going on. We can give you a heads up when we're about to do a live video, but just great plethora of just a lot of announcements. And so thank you guys for watching us on today. Thank you, Valerie, for all of this great information. Man, it was awesome.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. We're going to replay this several times so that all of our working people can watch it this afternoon when they get off work. And so wonderful, 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 wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a great, awesome day, Val. Okay, bye-bye.